Hi, I'm Sarah. Today I'm going to read you the story of Ruby, which is titled like this: My family sold our house to start a new life in Europe, without me. They said, "You're a burden." Now they expect me to take in 6 people for free. I said no, it's your own fault for your problems. Their reaction surprised. Well, let's go. I'm Ruby, and I guess I should start from the beginning. I've been at college for 2 years, about 3 states away from home. Got here on a partial scholarship, not full, unfortunately, so my parents had to cover the rest. It's been pretty intense juggling classes and everything, so I didn't visit home much. The thing is, my parents always favored my older sister Emma. Always. Like when we were kids, she'd get the bigger room while I got stuck with the tiny one next to the laundry room. When she turned 16, they bought her a car, nothing fancy, but still a car. When I turned 16? You can walk, it's good exercise. Emma got piano lessons, dance classes, art classes, summer camps, the works. Me? We can't afford it right now, Ruby. But somehow they could afford Emma's stuff. Emma was 22 when she got married to this guy Jake who works at some big company. I went to the wedding, obviously, but guess what? She didn't ask me to be a bridesmaid. Her college friends got that honor while I sat there watching like some random guest. Mom kept gushing about how perfect everything was while Dad talked business with Jake the whole reception. So anyway, I was scrolling through Facebook and Instagram all the time, and it's just photo after photo of my parents hanging out with Emma and Jake. Family dinners, holiday parties, random Tuesday night hangouts, weekend trips, you name it. My mom was constantly posting stuff like, "So blessed to have such wonderful kids," with pictures of Emma and Jake. Notice how she said kids plural but only shows one kid? Yeah, that stung every single time. Meanwhile, my parents barely called me. Maybe once every few weeks, and when they do, it's never about me. Oh Ruby, you should hear about Jake's promotion, where Emma and Jake are looking at houses in the nice part of town, where Jake got another bonus, he's so smart with money. Never, "How are your classes going?" or "Are you eating enough?" or "Do you need anything?" Just Jake this, Jake that, like he was their real son and I was just some afterthought. I got used to it though. Honestly, I barely noticed anymore because I was so busy with school and work. Yeah, I worked at this little cafe near campus, nothing glamorous, just taking orders, making coffee, cleaning tables. But hey, it pays some bills and gives me spending money for stuff my parents won't help with anymore. The worst part was during family events. Last Thanksgiving when I did make it home, the whole dinner conversation revolved around Jake's job and how he was going places in life. Dad kept saying stuff like, "Now that's what I call a real career path," while looking at me like I was wasting my time in college. Mom just nodded along, asking Jake about his work projects and his bright future while my attempts to talk about my studies got shut down with "That's nice, dear," before the conversation went right back to Jake's amazing accomplishments. So Christmas break came around, and I was actually looking forward to going home for once. I'd saved up money from the cafe and bought everyone small gifts, nothing expensive because I'm broke, but thoughtful stuff I picked out carefully. A nice scarf for Mom, a book Dad mentioned wanting, some fancy coffee for Emma and Jake. I figured maybe this time would be different, you know? Maybe they'd actually be happy to see me. I took the train home, carrying my little bag of presents, feeling pretty good about myself. But when I walked into the house, there's this weird chaos everywhere. Boxes, suitcases, people running around packing stuff. My parents are there, Emma and Jake too, and everyone was talking over each other about moving dates and shipping costs and plane tickets. Nobody even really acknowledged me walking in. Dad just grunted, "Oh, Ruby's here," without looking up from some paperwork. Mom waved vaguely in my direction while folding clothes into a suitcase. "What's going on?" I asked, standing there with my bag of gifts like an idiot. "Don't bother us right now, Ruby," Mom said without even turning around. "We're trying to get everything organized for the move." Move, this was news to me. What move? Which street are you moving to? Everyone just stopped what they were doing and laughed. Like, actually laughed at me. Emma had this smirk on her face that I wanted to slap off. Not which street, Ruby, Mom said, like I was 5 years old. Jake got an amazing offer from an international company in Italy. We're all moving to Europe together. I felt like someone had punched me in the gut. We're all moving? When were you planning to tell me? I need to start looking at colleges in Italy, figure out transfers, learn Italian maybe. The silence that followed was deafening. Everyone just stared at me like I'd said something insane. Then Dad spoke up, casual as anything, "You're not coming with us, Ruby." I stood there staring at my dad like he'd just spoken in a foreign language. "What do you mean I'm not coming? I'm your daughter too." Mom finally turned around, and the look on her face was so cold it made my blood freeze. "Ruby, you're 20 years old. You're an adult now, adults handle their own problems. Jake's got this incredible position lined up, and frankly, we think it's time you learn to stand on your own 2 feet. What about finishing my degree? I still have 2 years left." "That's your problem to figure out now," Dad said, not even looking up from his papers. I felt panic rising in my chest. "So you're just going to stop paying my tuition? Just like that?" "Ruby, let's be honest here," Mom said, "sitting down on a packed box like this was just a normal conversation. You've always been a burden on this family. The money we've spent on your college could have been used for so much more." The word burden hit me like a slap. "A burden? That's what you think I am?" "Well, what else would you call it?" Emma chimed in, stepping forward with her arms crossed. "Do you have any idea how much money Mom and Dad have wasted on you? Money they could have saved for important things? My education isn't important?" "Not when it's just throwing good money after bad," Jake said, putting his arm around Emma. "At least Emma contributes to the family. She found a successful husband, she's building something." "What are you doing, making coffee?" I tried one more desperate approach. "Okay, fine. If you won't take me now, I'll finish college here somehow and join you after graduation. Just give me your address in Italy." The silence that followed was deafening. Mom and Dad exchanged looks, and Emma actually smirked. "Ruby," Mom said slowly, "we don't want you to join us later either. This is our chance for a fresh start." Emma nodded smugly. "Ruby, you need to understand that we can't keep carrying you forever. You're a financial burden we can't afford anymore." There it was again, burden. The word they'd used to define my entire existence in their lives. I looked around the room at these people who were supposed to be my family. Mom was already back to folding clothes like I wasn't even there. Dad was shuffling through his papers. Emma and Jake were whispering to each other about packing lists. I walked over to the Christmas tree in the corner, all decorated and cheerful, and put down the bag of presents I'd been clutching. Nobody even noticed. 20 years of being their daughter, and it ended with being called a burden and told to figure it out myself. I walked out of that house without another word. Nobody called after me. Nobody followed me to the door. Nobody even said goodbye. The train ride back to college was a blur. I kept replaying their words over and over. Burden, difficult, we don't want you. By the time I got back to my dorm, I was numb. Campus was completely empty. Everyone had gone home for Christmas break. My room felt like a tomb, just me, my textbooks, and the crushing reality that I was truly alone now. I spent Christmas Day eating ramen noodles and cheap cookies I bought from the vending machine. No family dinner, no presents, no phone calls. The morning after Christmas, I forced myself to think practically. I needed about $20,000 to finish my last 2 years of college. My parents weren't going to help, they'd made that crystal clear. So I had to figure it out myself. I went to my job at the cafe and begged my manager for more hours. "I need to work as much as possible," I told her. "I'll take any shift you have." She was understanding and gave me double shifts whenever possible. While other students partied or relaxed, I worked. Every single day, sometimes 12 hours if I could manage it around my class schedule. I saved every dollar I could, buying only the absolute necessities. No new clothes, no going out with friends, no treating myself to anything. Every penny went toward tuition. In January, I learned from a cousin that my parents had sold the house and left for Europe with Emma and Jake. They didn't leave a forwarding address with anyone, not even relatives. It was like they wanted to make sure I could never find them. Fine by me, I was done with them too. The next 2 years were brutal. I worked constantly, studied harder than ever, and lived off cheap food and determination, but I did it. I graduated with excellent grades and a degree I'd paid for entirely myself. No help from family, no handouts, just pure stubbornness and coffee-stained textbooks. Right after graduation, I found a decent job at a marketing firm. Nothing fancy, but it paid well enough to rent a small apartment and start building a real life. I kept that same work ethic from college, taking on extra projects, staying late, volunteering for assignments nobody else wanted. My bosses noticed, and my career started moving up faster than I expected. I worked like a woman possessed for the next 5 years. While my coworkers went out for drinks, I worked on presentations. While they took vacations, I took on their projects for extra money. Every bonus, every raise, every extra dollar went straight into savings. I had a goal. I wanted my own place. After 5 years of living like a monk, I finally had enough for a down payment on a small apartment. It wasn't much, just a 1-bedroom in an okay neighborhood, but it was mine. I got a mortgage and felt proud as hell signing those papers. No family help, no cosigners, just me and my credit score. For the next 3 years, I threw every extra dollar at that mortgage. No fancy dinners, no expensive clothes, no vacations. I wanted to own something, really own it, without owing anyone anything. When I made that final mortgage payment, I cried. Not from sadness, but from pure relief and pride. But by then, the apartment felt too small. I was doing well at work, making good money, and I started thinking bigger. I wanted a house. A real house where I could spread out, maybe even think about a future family someday. So I sold the apartment and bought a house with a new mortgage. Nothing massive, but it had 3 bedrooms, a yard, and most importantly, it was mine. Well, mine and the bank's, but you know what I mean. I was living my best life, honestly. 10 years had passed since that nightmare Christmas, and I'd built something real for myself. My house was coming together nicely. I'd been slowly furnishing it and making it feel like home. Work was going great. I was dating this really sweet guy named Marcus, and for the first time in my adult life, I felt genuinely happy. Then my dad's cousin Patricia called me out of nowhere on a Tuesday evening. "Ruby, honey, I have some news," she said, and something in her voice made my stomach drop. "Your parents are back in the United States, and they're looking for you." My first instinct was panic, then anger. "How do you know this?" "Your mother called me last week asking if I had your contact information. She said they'd been trying to find you but you'd changed your phone number." I had changed my number twice since college, specifically so they couldn't contact me if they ever decided they wanted something. Guess it worked for a while. "Patricia, please tell me you didn't give them my address." "Of course not, sweetie. I know what happened 10 years ago and I wanted to warn you. They might try to contact other relatives to get your information." After I hung up, I tried to put it out of my mind. What were the odds they'd actually find me? I'd moved twice since college, changed jobs, changed everything. Besides, why would they want to find me now after 8 years of radio silence? I told myself to forget about it. I went back to my normal routine: work, gym, spending time with Marcus, working on the house. For about a month, I actually managed to push the whole thing out of my head. Then my doorbell rang on a Saturday afternoon while I was painting my guest bedroom. I opened the door, and there they were. All of them, Mom, Dad, Emma, and 3 little kids I'd never seen before clinging to Emma's legs. They looked older, tired, and definitely not like people living their dream life in Europe. For a moment, I just stood there in shock, paint roller still in my hand. "Surprise," Mom said with this fake cheerful voice, like we were long-lost friends meeting for lunch. "How did you find me?" I managed to ask. They didn't answer, Instead, they just pushed past me into my house like they owned the place. The kids immediately started running around touching everything. "Wow, Ruby," Emma said, looking around with this appraising expression. "Nice place, lots of room." Mom was doing the same thing, walking through my living room like she was measuring it. "Yes, this will work perfectly, plenty of space for the children." "What the hell are you talking about?" I finally found my voice. Emma sat down on my couch without being invited, pulling her youngest kid onto her lap. Jake turned out to be a complete bastard. We bought a house in Italy, but he put everything in his name only. Then he found some young Italian girl and kicked us all out. "He divorced me," she continued, her voice getting bitter. "And somehow he managed to arrange it so I got basically nothing, no house, no money, barely any child support. We were left with nothing." Mom nodded dramatically. "We had to come back to the States with almost no money. We've been staying in a motel for the past month." "That's terrible," I said slowly. "I'm sorry that happened to you. But I still don't understand why you're here." The silence that followed was telling. "Ruby," Dad said in that same condescending tone he'd used 8 years ago, "we're family. We need to stick together during hard times." That's when it hit me, they weren't here to apologize or reconnect. They were here because they needed something. "Let me get this straight," I said, my voice deadly calm. 8 years ago, you told me I was a burden, refused to help me finish college, and moved to Europe without even leaving a forwarding address. Now you're back because your perfect life fell apart, and you want what exactly?" Mom looked at me like I was being unreasonable. "We want to stay here, Ruby, with you. We're family, and family helps each other." I stared at them for a long moment. Emma was sitting on my couch like she belonged there. Mom was already mentally rearranging my furniture. Dad was looking at me expectantly, like of course I'd say yes. The kids were running around my house, touching my things, making noise. "No," I said quietly. "What?" Mom blinked. I said no, absolutely not, you are not staying here. "Ruby, be reasonable," Dad started. "Reasonable?" I cut him off. "You want to talk about reasonable? Let me tell you what's reasonable. Reasonable is remembering that 10 years ago, when I begged you not to abandon me, you told me to handle my own problems because I was an adult. Well, guess what? You're all adults too, handle your own problems." Emma's face turned red. "Ruby, you can't be serious, we have children. You should have thought about that before you put everything in Jake's name. You should have thought about that before you burned bridges with the only family member who might have actually helped you. You're being selfish," Mom snapped, her fake cheerfulness finally cracking. "We raised you, we gave you everything." "Everything? You gave me nothing. I paid for my own college, bought my own apartment, bought this house. Everything I have, I earned myself while you were living it up in Italy." The room went quiet except for the kids whimpering. They could sense the tension. "Ruby," Dad said in that manipulative tone I remembered from childhood, "surely you can find it in your heart to forgive us. Family is family." I looked at each of their faces. Still entitled, still expecting me to fix their problems while taking no responsibility for their own actions. "You know what," I said, walking to the front door and opening it. "You're right, family is family. And you made it very clear 10 years ago that I'm not part of yours." "Ruby, don't do this," Emma pleaded, but I could see the calculation in her eyes. "I'm not doing anything, I'm just applying the same logic you used on me. You're adults, figure it out." They left, but not before Mom hissed at me that I'd regret this, that they'd find a way to make me help them. I figured that was the end of it. They'd made their threats, I'd held my ground, and hopefully they'd crawl back to whatever hole they'd emerged from. I went back to my life, work, Marcus, fixing up the house. I almost convinced myself it was over. Then a month later, I got served with legal papers. My parents were suing me for financial support. $4,000 a month. The paperwork claimed they were elderly and unable to work, and that as their daughter, I was legally obligated to support them. They'd attached medical certificates stating they were disabled and couldn't earn income. I stared at those papers for a solid 10 minutes before the rage kicked in. These people who'd abandoned me, called me a burden, and refused to help me through college were now demanding I pay them $4,000 a month. The audacity was breathtaking. I called a lawyer immediately. Sarah Chen was recommended by a colleague, and when I explained the situation, she was incredulous. "Let me get this straight," she said. "They cut off your college funding, moved to another country without telling you, and now they want you to support them financially?" "That's exactly right." "Okay, we need to gather evidence. Do you have proof that you paid for your last 2 years of college yourself? Bank statements, loan documents, work records?" I spent the next 2 weeks digging through old paperwork. Bank statements showing my paychecks from the cafe, tuition payment receipts, everything I could find. It was painful going through those old documents. They brought back memories of working double shifts while my classmates partied, eating ramen for months to save money, the constant stress of wondering if I'd have enough for next semester's tuition. But I had everything, every receipt, every bank statement, every piece of proof that I'd done it all myself. "This is good," Sarah said when I brought her the documents, "but we need more. Do you have any written proof of their abandonment? Any documentation of them cutting you off?" That's when I remembered Patricia. I called her and explained what was happening. "Oh honey, this is terrible," she said, "but you know what? I might have something that could help you." She came over 2 days later with a manila envelope. Inside was a letter, an actual paper letter with no return address, postmarked from Italy about 6 months after they'd left. I read it with shaking hands. It was from my mother, and it was brutal. She wrote about how relieved they were to be free of me, how I'd always been a burden and disappointment, how much happier they were without having to worry about my problems. She actually used the phrase, "completely unnecessary person," to describe me. But that wasn't all. Patricia pulled out her phone. "I also recorded a conversation I had with your mother 2 weeks ago." She called me bragging about the lawsuit. She played the recording. My mother's voice came through clearly, talking about how they'd forged medical documents to make themselves look disabled, how they figured I was making good money and should be forced to share it, how this was payback for me refusing to let them move in. The trial was a circus. My parents showed up with Emma and her 3 kids, all dressed like they were going to church. My parents had walkers and were acting frail, playing up their supposed disabilities for the judge. They put on quite a performance. Mom cried while talking about how she'd sacrificed everything for her children, how she'd given me the best education money could buy, how she never expected her own daughter to abandon her in her time of need. Dad talked about his failing health and how they'd spent their life savings on my education, leaving them with nothing in their old age. It was all lies, but they were convincing lies. Then it was our turn. Sarah methodically presented the evidence. The bank statements showing I'd paid my own tuition. My work records proving I'd worked full-time while in school. Documentation of their house sale and move to Italy. Then she played the recording. The courtroom went dead silent as my mother's voice filled the room, admitting to forging disability documents and bragging about manipulating the legal system to extort money from me. After that, she presented the letter. Sarah read portions aloud, including the part where my mother called me completely unnecessary and wrote about how happy they were to be rid of me. My parents' lawyer looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. The judge was not amused at all. "This court finds the plaintiff's claims to be not only without merit, but fraudulent," he said. "The evidence clearly shows a pattern of abandonment and manipulation. Furthermore, the defendants have admitted to falsifying medical documents, which is a serious crime." He dismissed the case and ordered my parents to pay a substantial fine for the forged documents. He also issued a restraining order preventing them from contacting me. Outside the courthouse, my parents tried to approach me, but Sarah stepped in front of them. "Don't even think about it. You come near my client again, and you'll be in jail." They left looking defeated and angry. Emma gave me one last hateful look before following them. That was 2 years ago. I never heard from them again, and honestly, I don't want to. Patricia tells me they moved to some small town in another state, probably to avoid the legal consequences of their fraud. Me? I'm doing great. Marcus and I got married last year. He was incredibly supportive through the whole legal mess. We're talking about starting a family soon, which is both exciting and terrifying. I want to make sure I'm nothing like the parents I had. I've learned something important through all this: family isn't just about blood. It's about people who actually care about you, who support you when things get tough, who celebrate your successes instead of resenting them. My parents taught me that lesson the hard way, but I'm grateful for it now. I built a life without them, and it's a pretty damn good life. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd let them move in, if I'd been the bigger person and forgiven them. But then I remember that letter, that recording, the way they looked at me like I owed them something just for existing. I don't owe them anything, I never did, and now, finally, I'm free.